Simon Trower, welcome to the Amateur Rugby Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Tim. Thank you very much.
Very welcome. Now, obviously, it's a rugby podcast, so I'd just love to know, how did rugby come into your life?
How did it come into my life? Well, I was born into a rugby family. So from, I guess, a very, very early age, I was sort of given a rugby ball or taken to Twickenham or, taken to one of the grounds around the country. So got an older brother. So yeah, rugby was a huge part of my life growing up. So I guess I diverted slightly to football in my school years, which obviously caused a little bit of distress to my dad and my brother. So I think it was about a year that I got quite a lot of banter. So yeah, just a season playing football. Then I was back in rugby again. So, but yeah, everything, since the age of 6, I think, when I started playing minis, it was all about rugby. Dad was involved with a local club. My mum used to cook the teas for the players. Sister dated all my mates. The standard kind of rugby family thing. So yeah, it's been a big part of my life.
So yeah, I can imagine that one year when you diverted to football must have been quite traumatic. Were you grounded? Were there threats of taking things away or?
No, I don't think so. I do remember. Didn't really come to watch many games, to be fair. So always on the sideline with rugby, but I think with football, I think he just let me get on with it. With the silky shirts and all that kind of stuff back in the sort of early 90s. But no, it was one of those things that, when your mates are playing football at school, you just want to hang out with your mates. So, and a lot of my mates were playing football at the time. So I thought I'd give it a go, and I wasn't that good. I think rugby was, I think I'm a better rugby player, so I'll stick to that.
Yeah, cool. So what position were you and how did you find your junior rugby?
Position, I was always going to be a back, so I started off playing fly half, and I sort of stuck in that position for a very, very long time. I think I was pretty slight, pretty sort of skinny lad growing up. So I was, trying to avoid contact as much as possible. And again, that was quite a funny dynamic because my brother was, he was a forward, played second row, then moved to front row. So we're very different. And I guess it got to, probably the age of sort of 2021. And I guess when you start your relationship with beer, your late teens and stuff, and then I started to put on a few pounds, and then very quickly found myself moving from 10 to 12, and then thinking, maybe go to 13. But yeah, I think I just lost so much pace. I just stuck to playing 12.
I love that. I've never heard it called a relationship before with beer. That's a nice way of putting it, I think. It feels like that sometimes, doesn't it?
It was my. I know it does, mate. It does for me. I think, just got to, sort of try and control
it. Yeah. So who did you play for in your senior rugby, and what did you get to?
I played for Henley Rugby Club. So, like I said, I started off from the age of 6, always wanting to play for the first 15. And I guess I got to the sort of fringes of the first 15. I don't know if I may have played a couple of midweek games. And at the time they were playing in the old championship. So like Nat 1, I think it was back then. Unfortunately, I never, got a league start or anything, but, I was playing with and training with some really good players. But that's when I sort of got the first sort of major injury, which was prolapsed disc in my back, which I was out for quite a long time and had surgery. So that kind of really, I guess, put a bit of a dampener on, trying to become sort of semi-professional at the time or anything like that, or, fulfilling the dream of trying to get a contract.
Yeah, I remember at the time, because I was at Cheltenham and Henley. We played Henley a few times. It was always a club that really enthralled me for some reason. I'm not even sure why. I think they were just playing some great rugby at the time. They seemed to be sort of making headlines and things like that. What was your experience from the inside?
my experience was always that Henley tried to play a style of rugby, which was, um, you know, I guess historically, if the weather was bad, if it was muddy or wet, we always tried to play an expansive game and a running game. So I think if the weather was good, was fair, I think we always had our hopes that we'd be able to, put the ball wide and fast attacking rugby. And I think before my time was when Sir Clive Woodward came to the club. I think he'd come from Manly in Australia, and he was very quick to implement a style of rugby that he'd obviously experienced in Australia. It was very different to the standard sort of up your jumper kind of rugby at the time, and we obviously got a lot of success from that, and attracted some really good players. And for a small town, in South Oxfordshire, they have achieved a lot, and it just attracted that style of player of expansive game, fast, dynamic. But as ever, money plays a huge part, and if you don't sustain in certain leagues, if you get relegated, players are going to leave, sponsors will pull out, and unfortunately, that sort of happened.
Oh, so Sir Clive was a coach there. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. What sort of years?
Yeah, that was
those.
Definitely the 90s. So I'm going to have a guess at probably like 94, 95. I would have thought. I may be wrong, but yeah, he didn't coach me. I was too young at the time, but I think he'd come from Manly in Australia, and I think Henley were playing in sort of Southwest Division 1 at the time. But really sort of changed the style of play. Obviously took a lot of learnings from the Southern Hemisphere at the time, and adapted it. And also Henley had some form of relationship with Manly that I presume that he developed, which was, we sent a few players over to Manly, they sent a few players over to us. So, we had some guys that had been playing Australia under 21s, them playing in Southwest Division 1. So they really stood out, as you can imagine. And I think just lifted a lot of people, lifted a lot of players in the inside. And, some really happy memories of being a young kid watching that team. There's some really old footage still about that you just see they're scoring some great tries, and they very quickly went up the leagues. I think Sir Clive went from Henley to London Irish, I think. But at the point where he left, I think he left it in a really good situation, good position, and a lot of players that joined, and he left a bit of a legacy that for people to use as a platform to move on, and not just players on the field, but I think people off the field as well were attracted to the club. And since then, and the professional era, just changing the name from Henley Rugby Club to Henley Hawks, that kind of era of naming sides and things like that, again, stash and all of the kit, and it just, the whole environment of rugby back then, it was changing. And it was an exciting time for the club, definitely. There was some good players.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting thing you said there about a couple of players coming over that were, head and shoulders above the rest. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be that much better, but just a different style of player sometimes coming into a club can really generate a huge amount of enthusiasm and interest, and just spark a new wave of progress within a club. I've found that throughout my career, almost from Colts level onwards, really. Whenever that's happened with a team, it's almost like a new breed of ideas or a new perspective, and that really helps.
Yeah, I think so. I think it just, like you said, just a different mindset to how people probably approach training, how they prepared for games. And again, my memories of those guys that came in, not necessarily just Australia, but from New Zealand, from South Africa, those Southern Hemisphere countries, they just, I think, brought the best out of people. They created a really good environment, a lot of fun, a lot of laughter, and just the way that those guys looked at rugby in a different way to the English, I guess. And the whole sports psychology back then was obviously very different, but just the way they approached the games, I think, really competitive. I think that competitive spirit that New Zealand, Australia, South Africa just in sport in general, really influenced a lot of people.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And how's the Henley club doing nowadays? I know it's almost sort of stabilized at the level they're at. How are they looking at the moment?
So I think they're probably on a journey of rebuilding. I think, I guess from my personal experience and personal opinion, you look back on when a club has reached a really good level. I think it's really difficult to obviously sustain that without serious financial support. And I can imagine probably the players now are probably, you go into a clubhouse and you see all the pictures of them, when they played Gloucester in the cup, and they're beating Exeter Chiefs from the league back in early 2000s or something. It's they're now in Nat 2 South, so I think they've obviously come down a few leagues, and they're rebuilding. They still play some really attractive rugby, but I think personally as well, so it's really competitive. There's some really good teams in the national leagues. And I think also the jump between the leagues, there's some big jumps. But from a club for Henley, they're still in the National League. They're still playing well. They missed out on promotion in 2019. Just completely forget about 2020. Yeah. So they missed out going up to Nat 1. So they definitely can achieve that. But it's like all clubs, isn't it? And whatever sport, you've got to retain players, strength and depth, creating a good environment, injuries, and consistency, and just getting through a season. Because when you start in September, we always used to, sometimes just say, look, let's just focus on winning all of our home games. That's the ultimate. We never lose at home. But also, when you're playing someone like Red Ruth away in the beginning of January, or you're playing down in Gloucestershire, the week before Christmas, it's wet, muddy. Those are the games. I'm sure you well known, Tim, that the results. You really got to dig deep in those crunch matches, because when you get to March, April time, you can look back on it and go, yeah, geez, that win or that draw, or that bonus point that we got down in Cornwall that day, that's been huge. So there's some really key pivotal moments throughout the season, I guess, for everybody that they need to target. So
yeah, I think that's right. And along with the just the point that it was, or whatever, like just building the character within the squad to go to places like that. And yes, I'm from Gloucestershire myself, so I'm very aware of some of the clubs that are playing there and how difficult it is, especially in the depths of winter, as you say, and Cornwall.
No, absolutely. I think it's character is obviously a huge part, isn't it, in sport? And when you go to those places, it's intimidating. The fan base, and just coming away with something that you can say, yeah, we managed to get something out of today. It's funny. But as you say, character building. Everyone has those bus journeys back from Forest of Dean or whatever, and you kind of in the nicest possible way, you're kind of glad to get out of there.
I'm going to say the bus journeys could be character building as well, really, in a different way.
It is, yeah, especially for the young lads. Yeah.
Just going back to what we were saying previously, though, about building from a sound base and things like that. I think after, well, it's 25 years plus now, but I think the leagues are starting to settle down, and a lot of clubs are choosing where they want to be. They kind of recognize the level where their club is and are very happy being there. I'm sure there are still some very ambitious clubs around and they want to go on and push, but do you see it like that? Do you see that the leagues are generally more stable now than they have been for some time?
I guess I only say from my opinion, I haven't really been within the, sort of within coaching structures or anything like that. So I don't see week in, week out, the national leagues. I guess from my experience of, sort of London Southeast Premier or Southwest Division, there are some really good sides that when they get promoted to Nat 2, they can hold their own. But you make a really good point about where do clubs want to be. And I find it difficult as a player, because whenever I played, I wanted to win. I wanted to play to the best ability that I could. I never went out on a Saturday thinking, oh, it doesn't really matter if we lose this game because we don't really want to get promoted, do we? Kind of thing. At the beginning of every season, I wanted to get promoted or wanted to win a cup. So I think off the field, that's more of an off the field kind of probably planning and strategy and structure on, as a club, where do we want to be in the leagues? Because I'm sure that equals cost, gate revenue, how much they charge match days. Are they going to get people to come along and pay X amount to come and watch? So there's a number of different elements, I guess. Just my experience when I played, there was always quite a big jump between the leagues. From Nat 1 to the old Premiership, and I think you really used to see a difference of standard massively.
Yeah, for sure. And I think unless it's one of those clubs that gets promoted that is already on a mission, and they're already thinking about the next promotion, the vast majority of clubs do struggle.
But that's maybe, and I may be wrong, but it's a case of financial backing. I think you see some clubs in the past that suddenly get a huge injection of cash, and then suddenly you get some big names, or you get some people from overseas join, and they really are on a fast track mission to get up the leagues, because they've had an injection of cash. As soon as that's taken away, but they just stumble down. I think when trying to think back when I played, like Newbury Blues were a huge, they were going places. I think they had Vodafone as a sponsor, and they built a new ground, and I think they were pretty high up in the league. And then for whatever reason, financial struggles or constraints, you lose a sponsor, you lose something, players suddenly, you can't pay their wages, they move on, and then the club suddenly just starts going down the leagues, which is really sad. And you can probably, there's a few examples of clubs out there that have got to Nat 1 championship level, and then they've lost a few games, they find themselves at the bottom in the relegation battle, they get relegated, and it's kind of their downfall, which is really sad. But I think that's off the back of somebody coming along and throwing a lot of cash to a club, and then through, I hate to say it, but that results driven business, that if you're not getting results, then there's implications, isn't there?
Yeah, and I think, I don't know, I think it seems like it's happening less and less nowadays, and I think that's a good thing. I think there's more stability. I think clubs are planning a little bit more long term than maybe they once did, and I just generally think that's a better, more healthy situation for everybody, really.
No, absolutely. I totally agree. I don't want it to go down that route, but and I hope it doesn't. But yeah, hopefully they have a bit more sort of a long-term aim with regards to where their clubs go.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's get back to yourself. Tell me about that injury and how it affected you. And did you get back from that first injury, the back surgery?
No, not really. To be honest, it came about just on a training night. I remember just doing sort of shuttle runs, and go down to a cone, turn around, and suddenly I just sort of flat on my face, and I was just completely locked up. I think so. Yeah, I was probably only like 24, 25 at the time, and just saw physio, sort of saying, you probably strained your back, etc. You leave it obviously a few weeks, it starts to settle down, you get back into it again, you start taking painkillers, and that was just sort of a recurring process probably for a season. And then it just got to a really bad point where just couldn't get up in the morning, couldn't get changed, couldn't walk, was in so much pain. Saw a surgeon who said told me what the issue was, and saying, look, I don't really want to operate on you. You're pretty young to have this operation. Let's try another direction of physio and building, and which I did. Again, got back playing, but then just sort of had a bit of relapse, and the only option was surgery. So that was probably for a couple of years, just going through, occasionally playing the odd game, taking loads of painkillers before a game, lasting 30 minutes, 40 minutes, not playing particularly well.
Yeah.
Because I was more worried about, getting, more serious injury, but I just didn't want to not play or not be involved. And then you just think, oh, that's just ridiculous. And then, that's the only option. And having the surgery, it was quite a long time out of the game. And you just I'm not probably fell out of love with it, but I think it did really kind of, I don't know if you've ever had a back injury, but when your back is bad, it's, it affects everything. Like, it really does get you down mentally. It really does. It's you just cannot do the basic things in life. Washing, getting dressed, getting into a car, getting out of a car, and you go from like really active person in a gym, really focused on getting ready for a match day, and to nothing. It was really tough. So it just sort of fizzled out, really. Just knew that I'd never sort of play seriously again.
Yeah. And how did that affect you, without it being like too obvious? Obviously, hearing about your rugby history and how, you've been involved in rugby basically your entire life. How did you like deal with that?
Probably not very well, actually. I would say, there's no doubt about it. It affected me massively from a mental health point of view, because all I wanted to do when I was younger was play rugby for a job. It wasn't even professional, obviously, then. I just loved the game so much. It was just my life. It was, I used to go down to training night when I was a kid, just because my dad was down there for selection, and I just used to, kick a ball on my own in floodlights. And then on, Saturday, it was all about, the family, because my mum was, cooking for the players. It was like match day, and then, to the evening, it was just sort of waiting around outside the clubhouse after, dad had had a few pints, for my mum to shout, right, come on, kids, we're going. And then Sunday was minis and juniors. So it was everything. Rugby was everything to me. And all I wanted to do was play for the first 15. And, I played county, had the whole, schools trials and things like that. And then, when that suddenly just sort of stopped, and that realization of like, what, I'm not going to play rugby as a career. I'm not that good enough. I've got quite a serious injury. You do sort of feel sorry for yourself for a little bit.
Yeah, I'm sure. How long did that process sort of go on for, until you sort of almost made peace with it, or sort of found a way to sort of move on to the next thing, maybe?
Totally, completely flirted with the idea of like just wanting to play again, and then it was just a case of just getting another injury. It was just stupid. I remember playing one game, got a text of like late Friday night from somebody, oh, thirds are playing away tomorrow. Any chance you can bench? And we've all been there, haven't we? And you're just like you're on the sofa going, oh yeah, I'd love a little run out. Actually, it's only I'm only benching, so I probably only get 20 minutes, but it'd be really nice. And next day I did. First 5 minutes, dislocated my shoulder.
Oh.
And it's you end up in A&E, and you're just thinking, oh my god, someone's trying to tell me something here. And from the playing point of view, then I just left it. I just left it alone. I didn't really want to be involved at all. Flirted with sort of coaching and trying to help put out on that, but just I didn't get the same buzz of playing, and I didn't really have my heart set on coaching. I just wanted to be in that environment. you know, that environment of training, changing room, clubhouse, trying to get that buzz back that I had as a player. And you do to a certain extent, but you do miss that feeling of sitting in a clubhouse after getting battered, having a pint with your mates and eating some shit food.
Why is the food always so bad?
on a plastic plate with a white plastic fork, but you always eat it because you're really hungry. Yeah, you can't beat that. You know, you just cannot beat that